Thanks for checking out this show review video. So this is for Creepshow Season 4, Episode 1. And yes, I'm doing one video for each episode, which is 2 stories apiece. And then at the end, I believe I'm going to be doing a ranking of all of the stories from the season. And then I might do a full ranking of all of the stories, period, throughout all the seasons. I don't know if I'm going to do that one, but I'm pretty sure about the season 1. So I will say off the bat, it was nice to get back to seeing Creepshow. It's basically been about a year and a half since season 3 was on. So it's been a long time. And it's just one of those things where I love kind of bite-sized horror. So even if the stories aren't great, I'm still going to enjoy it to some degree. But I'm also going to be very honest and give it a proper star rating. So like I do with these videos, there's a star rating for each of the stories and not for the overall episode because that doesn't really matter. So let's go ahead and get into it. So all the episodes are going to be dumped on Shudder on Friday, October 13th. So you can go ahead and binge all of them if you want to. The screener copies that I got, or at least for episode 1, did not have any intro. Usually they have an actual intro with the creep. I'm assuming when the screeners went out to me, which were about a month early, maybe actually a little bit more than a month early, I just assumed they weren't finished with that. So you will probably have that in the episode you watched. I did not have it for mine, so I can't really speak to that. All right, so let's get into the very first story. This first story is 20 Minutes with Cassandra. And I can't give synopses because of the embargo with, it not being on Shudder yet when I'm putting these out. So I can't give you synopses, but I can tell you about certain things I observed about, the episode or the stories and, kind of my feelings on those, whether it's good or bad, all that. So anyway, 20 Minutes with Cassandra. This one is directed by Greg Nicotero. Other stories that he did for Creepshow were Gray Matter, The Finger, Survivor Type, Twitterings from the Circus of the Dead, Shapeshifters, Anonymous, Model Kid, Public Television of the Dead, Pesticide, Night of the Living, Late Show, Queen Bee, Skeletons in the Closet, and Drug Traffic. So he's directed a majority. I mean, he is the showrunner, so it kind of makes sense. The writer for this story was Jamie Flanagan, who's done some writing for episodes of The Haunting of Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, and The Midnight Club. I'm assuming this individual is related to Mike Flanagan because of all those. All right. The beginning of this introduces an interesting concept for the story. So it really does a good job of kind of grabbing you early, in my opinion. So I was intrigued from the get-go. And that's what I'm typically really looking for with these Creepshow shorts. They don't have a lot of time, and this one was probably a little bit more than a half an hour, I think. And it did a good job of kind of grabbing you early. It had really good pacing to it, in my opinion, and interesting concept, like I said. Very interesting story concept. Very original in what it was doing, so that's always a very welcome thing. There is an ability for some of these stories to do a good job with stories that aren't that original and you feel like you've seen it numerous times, as long as they do a little something different with it. But I feel like this one is a very original concept, and I always really glom onto those as being some of my favorites. So the beginning really does grab you. The moment where things get real, pretty awesome. Because that happens with every single one of these stories. There's that moment where things are a little bit normal, and then all of a sudden there's a catalyst moment where it's like, okay, now we've kind of kicked into high gear. Now we know that there's something more going on. So when that moment happens, pretty awesome in my opinion. I think they picked a great way to kind of kick things off. There's a tonal shift in this movie. I guess it is a movie, but I'll just call it a short. There's a tonal shift at a certain point pretty early on that I was like, it seems out of nowhere. It seems odd. It doesn't make sense as it goes on, but I still think that tonal shift was A, too early, and B, too abrupt. Like, the way they did it was too much of this kind of, like, quick change that it felt like a really large speed bump when you're driving and you didn't see it and you're just like, whoa, what was that? That type of experience. So that was one of my big criticisms of it. But like I said, you understand the reason for the tonal shift, and if you can get past kind of how abrupt it is and how out of nowhere it is, then you'll be okay. There's a character that is kind of fun, but also pretty annoying at times in this. So it was this weird thing where, like, certain moments I was like, oh, I'm kind of having fun with this character. I kind of like this character. And then other moments I was like, oh, this is too much. It's kind of over the top. They're overdoing it. It's like making me want to get them off the screen. So, yeah. I'd be interested to see what other people think of that character. And when you watch it, you'll know what character I'm talking about. So you can go ahead and comment on that. Some of the horror lands pretty well, or it's horror, humor, it's all horror. Some of the humor lands pretty well. There is a humorous twist to it. Actually, a lot of the stories in the Creepshow series does put humor into it, and this is one of those. And some pretty decent chuckles that I kind of had with myself because I was watching it by myself. And yeah, I thought it was pretty decent from the humor standpoint. Sometimes it feels a little bit off. Sometimes it feels like maybe they're kind of languishing in the humor a little bit too long. Maybe should have cut a little bit of that down, but for the most part, pretty solid. I really did enjoy the performance of the main character, played by Samantha Sloyan. She was great. She was so good. I wanted to see more of her, and I guess I might, because she has also worked with Mike Flanagan. Are we seeing a theme here? She was in Midnight Mass as well as The Midnight Club. Both shows that I still need to see. Wanted to see, I just didn't get around to it, so eventually. But she was great. Some of the dialogue does go over the top. I wasn't a big fan of that. I'm kind of particular about my dialogue. I want it to feel a little more realistic. But I will also say that you have gotten a decent amount of that type of dialogue that happens in these Creepshow stories. So it's not super out of place with the show itself. But it's just something that kind of bothers me a little bit, that the dialogue becomes a little bit too verbose, a little bit too over the top. It's sometimes a little more intellectual than it really needed to be for like a real life situation, or what you're trying to make people feel is a real life situation for the environment created. So just some thoughts there. It ends up getting more deep than you would think, and it actually shows a lot of heart. So in the end, I actually, I had a few issues with it, but in the end, I actually did quite enjoy this particular story. So 20 Minutes with Cassandra, I'm going to thumbs up on that one. Out of 5 stars, half stars in play, 3.5 stars on 20 Minutes with Cassandra. Thought that was pretty good. Then let's move to the second story of the episode, and that is called Smile. No connection to the bigger movie Smile, which was actually not that bad. This one's directed by John Harrison, also someone who's done a lot of directing for Creepshow series. He directed some Tales from the Dark Side episodes, by the way, some Tales from the Crypt episodes, and then he directed The House of the Head, All Hallows Eve, Night of the Paw, Times is Tough in Muskie Holler, Within the Walls of Madness, Okay, I'll Bite, and A Dead Girl Named Sue. So doing a lot of work for Creepshow. This one was written by Mike Scannell, who the only other thing that I saw that they had done is He's Out There, which I'm not familiar with. The acting for this one is pretty good. It's not great. I think the acting for the first one, for 20 Minutes with Cassandra, definitely kind of outshone this one, but the acting is good. I didn't have any problems with it. There wasn't anything where I was like, ooh, that was rough. So solid enough acting. There is a weird effect in this that ends up getting used, I think like 3 times maybe, that it's like this visual effect, and I was just like, it doesn't look good. Like, I understand what they were going for, but they pulled it off in a very poor way. It's one of those moments where it kind of like takes you out of the experience, because it's just like, that's really not looking great here. Yeah. For its length, it feels like it takes too long to get going. In general, I think the pacing of this one is not great. Eventually, it does get to a point towards the end where you need better pacing, where the pacing does get better. But for the most part, this one is like 20-some minutes, I think. Like, it's not nearly as long as 20 Minutes with Cassandra, but it is kind of slow, in my opinion, and unnecessarily so. And like I said, it takes way too long, in my opinion, to get going. There is some stuff that's kind of introduced into it, like a little bit of talking and everything that, you understand they're trying to kind of like build the characters a little bit, but I think they could have cut some of that down personally. Just my thoughts. The music is over the top. Pretty over the top. That's one of the things that's just kind of one of my pet peeves. I will always comment on that stuff. If it feels like the score is really screaming at you. I didn't feel it was that way with 20 Minutes with Cassandra, but with Smile, it's very over the top. It's very in your face. It gets used too heavily too often, in my opinion, and it just kind of makes the whole thing seem ridiculous to a degree. There's a key thing that happens that's easy to see coming in this, and during that event, there's a character who is scripted in a horribly unrealistic manner. Another thing that drives me up a wall is when you have a character who, within the environment created here, would act a certain way, and a big event happens and they don't act that way. And so you just see this person totally defying everything you know they would be doing, and that's frustrating. And I think a lot of people are going to watch this one, see that exact same moment, and also get frustrated with it and be like, really? Really? It's one of those kind of convenience for writing type things, and I don't like it. Not a big fan. The point of this one is a pretty good point. Like, the underlying theme, what they're trying to get across, is pretty solid. I understand what they were trying to do. It actually has a bit of impact to it. But the way that this was executed, not the best in my opinion. Wasn't a huge fan. I think it really just mainly comes down to the story. So, out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm giving this a 1.5 star rating as far as these Creepshow stories go. So, I'm wondering if this is what they're going to be doing, is kind of pairing a strong one with a kind of weak one for each of the episodes. I'll find out, because I've only watched 1 episode at this point. But if that is the case, I'm fine with it. You know, if there's 6 episodes, if I get like 6 solid to really good episodes, I'm good with that. You know, half is fine for me. But, you know, in the end, I just really like having, like I said, bite-sized horror. It's a lot of fun, and you're not wasting a lot of time, so it's a good time. So, at this point, I have already put up all the other reviews for all the episodes, so I just dumped them all on the internet. You can go ahead and watch all of them at this point, so please do that. Also, do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel. That's your best way to repay me for all this free content. And hit the notification bell button, because that way you'll know when I'm putting up new videos. Also, you can do, you know, likes and all that. I mean, it does help me with the visibility, so if you want to do that, that's totally cool. And comments, go ahead and put comments. I'm really interested to find out, if you go and watch this when it's available, what were your thoughts on these? You know, especially if you had differing opinions, because I always love that when people are like, you really didn't like this one, but I actually did, and here's why. Kind of makes me rethink the things, and I do like that kind of mental gymnastics. But thank you so much for checking this out, and until next time, keep it brutal.